Chapter 28, Section 1, continued. We need to talk about the creation of a new international organization called the United Nations. Before the war was over, 1944, the United States, Britain, Soviet Union, and China got together to work out a proposal for a post-war international organization, the purpose of which would be work for world peace. In April of 1945, in San Francisco, delegates from 50 nations are going to get together and draw up the Charter of the United Nations. The United Nations basically has two different parts to it. One part is the General Assembly, and all member nations are a part of the General Assembly. Originally, that was 51 nations, and as of now, it is 193 nations. The other part is the Security Council. The Security Council is made up of 15 members. 5 of those are permanent members of the Security Council. They're always on the Security Council. United States, Soviet Union, today would be Russia, Britain, France, and China. The other 10 members rotate through other nations, but these 5 are the permanent members. And the Security Council deals with military and political problems in the world, and they have the power where they can veto any action of the General Assembly. And this time, this is obviously going to be replacing the League of Nations, and this time the U.S. Senate does approve our membership in the UN, whereas the League of Nations, we did not. October 24th, 1945 is the official beginning of the UN. The headquarters of the UN is located in New York City. The first leader of the UN is going to be a guy by the name of Trygve Lie from Norway, and the leader of the UN is referred to as the Secretary General. And one of our first delegates to the UN was actually Eleanor Roosevelt. She served as one of the first U.S. delegates to the UN. The first issue that the UN is going to have to deal with in the world was Palestine. Palestine was an area in the Middle East that was claimed by 2 different groups of people. It was claimed by the Arabs as being theirs. It was claimed by the Jews as being theirs. And that had been around for a while. But after World War II, many more Jews are going to start moving there, and the Arabs are going to protest. Britain controlled Palestine. It was a British mandate. And as this protest starts happening, and you got this this argument between the Jews and the Arabs, basically Britain can't resolve the issue. Britain can't resolve the issue, and so now that we have the UN, Britain turns the issue over to the UN and basically says, it's all yours. The UN decides, you know what, this is simple. The Arabs say it's theirs, the Jews say it's theirs, let's just divide it into 2 states. And we'll split it kind of where people live. One area can be for the Jews, and one area can be for the Arabs. And you can see how it's split there on that map. It's not split just like in half, but they tried to keep it where Jewish areas stayed Jewish and Arab areas stayed Arab. The Arabs hate this plan. They hate this plan because they think all of Palestine should be theirs. Zionism considers this a success. Zionism was a movement seeking a Jewish homeland in Palestine, and that's what this would do. The Zionist movement was led by David Ben-Gurion, who had been supporting this idea since the early 1900s. In 1948, you're going to have the formation of Israel. Brand new country, Israel. Immediately, us and the Soviets recognized this new country, but the Arab countries react violently. They refuse to recognize Israel as being a legit country, and they actually organized their military forces to try and retake this land for Palestine. So your Egypt and your Iraqs and your Lebanons and your Syrias and your Transjordan and these Arab nations are going to come together and try to retake this land. Even though they are outnumbered, Ben-Gurion is going to lead Israel to capture a bunch more of Palestine, partly funded by the American Jewish community, but the Jews take even more of Palestine. The UN is going to send a mediator, trying to solve this fight, this war, basically. The mediator does arrange a ceasefire, although it's a shaky ceasefire. And basically, it really only kind of lasts here until this UN mediator is actually assassinated by Israeli extremists who thought Israel could take the rest of Palestine. So the UN's going to have to send in another mediator in 1949, and this time it's going to be a U.S. diplomat by the name of Ralph Bunche. And he's going to arrange for an armistice and actually wins a Nobel Peace Prize for helping to stop this fighting. First African American to win a Nobel Peace Prize. So the agreements that is reached in 1949, as part of this agreement, Israel receives even more land. You can see there on the map. But before this whole argument took place, the white areas on that left-hand side of the map, stage 1, those were the Jewish areas. And then the Arabs didn't like how the Jews were taking over areas, so the UN in 47, the middle stage there, decides to split it. Israeli areas, Palestinian areas. The Arabs don't like that. They try to attack Israel, and so now you're going to end up with a divide on the third side where Israel takes even more of the Palestinians' land, and the capital, Jerusalem, is going to be split. You would have Arab zones and you would have Israeli zones. The Arab states refuse to recognize Israel, some of them even to today. And this whole issue in Israel is left unresolved. Almost any day of the week, of the month, you can look on news sites and see issues happening between Palestinians and Israel today.